So we're gonna be watching The Luckiest People Who Survived the Impossible by The Paint Explainer.
Stephen McCormack. Stephen, an experienced truck driver from New Zealand, was working on his truck. He was positioned between the truck's bumper and the trailer when something crazy happened. He slipped and fell, but something felt off. He didn't feel just regular pain. He felt his body inflating like a balloon, nearly doubling in size. His colleagues and his son rushed to help him, quickly realizing what had actually happened. Stephen had fallen onto the brass valve that supplies compressed air to the truck's brakes. The valve punctured his bum, forcing pressurized air into his body. They immediately shut off the air supply, laid him on the ground, and called an ambulance. Unfortunately, both emergency vehicles in the area were occupied, forcing him to wait in that state for an entire hour. When he finally arrived at the hospital, doctors understood.
So you're telling me that this guy did not feel it when they went up his ass? It started pushing air up his ass. I don't know, man. There's a possibility he might have let it happen. I don't know. Just saying.
Severity of his condition. The air had separated fat tissue from muscle, filling his abdomen, chest, and even the spaces around his lungs, heart, and behind his eyelids. To help him breathe, doctors inserted a tube through his ribs and into his lungs. As for the trapped air, it had to be expelled naturally through farts, a process that took 3 days. Stephen made a full recovery, and doctors later determined that if the valve had punctured another part of his body, it could have damaged a blood vessel, and he would have died.
So you're pretty much telling me that it was better that I went up his ass because that actually saved his life.
Joan Murray was an experienced skydiver, having already completed 35 jumps. It was supposed to be just another routine dive, and as she plummeted at 120 miles per hour, she attempted to deploy her parachute. I say attempted because it didn't open. After multiple tries, she reached for her reserve parachute, which, to her relief, deployed successfully. However, another problem quickly arose. She began spinning uncontrollably, causing the parachute's cords to tangle into a knot, rendering it useless. She crashed into the ground at 80 miles per hour, and upon impact, she heard a loud crack before losing consciousness. Joan fell into a coma and was rushed to the hospital, where doctors performed multiple complex reconstructive surgeries and blood transfusions. The entire right side of her body was crushed, yet incredibly, 2 weeks later, she woke up from the coma and made a full recovery.
Full recovery?
She survived was just crazy. By pure chance, she landed directly on a fire ant nest, disturbing the venomous ants. In response, they came out of their nests and swarmed her body, stinging and biting her over 200 times. Fire ant venom, known as solanopsin, stimulates the nervous system. The overwhelming amount of it that was injected into her body kept her heart beating until paramedics arrived, saving her life. Margaret Guire.
That's actually such pure luck, because if she landed like just 2 meters to the left, she would have died, probably an impact. And also the fact that she made a full recovery, like she was not paralyzed. So I don't know what happened, what the right side of her body looked like, that he said that was just all like destroyed, or even the body after like she got bitten by over 200 times. Like the fact that that girl alive is insane. Just some crazy stories. And honestly, probably would have been better for her that she ended up in a coma, because if she was awake while that happened, I don't think she would have made it. I think she would have like panicked, and her heart would have just like started giving her probably a heart attack.
Margaret was a young Canadian woman who had just married her husband, Herbert, in 1915. To celebrate, they decided to take a trip and boarded the RMS Lusitania in New York City, bound for Liverpool. They were enjoying their trip, having a routine dinner on the ship, when suddenly they heard a loud boom. The ship had been torpedoed by a German submarine. Herbert immediately escorted his wife Margaret to a lifeboat, where she was joined by 3 other women and a baby. However, as she looked up, she saw the ship's massive smokestacks above them, and she feared they might collapse onto their lifeboat. In a moment of panic, she climbed back up the stairs to the deck, while Herbert, believing she was safe, boarded another lifeboat with other passengers. As the Lusitania rapidly sank, Margaret tried to swim away from the wreckage, but her efforts were in vain. A whirlpool formed as the ship submerged, pulling her and 2 other men into one of the
Whirlpools
smokestacks.
are
Miraculously, a sudden explosion from below blasted her back to the surface, where she was spotted and rescued by a nearby lifeboat. As she looked around, she saw Herbert in another lifeboat crying, believing she had died.
I really don't think you guys understand how dangerous whirlpools are actually, because what they do is just pretty much they drag you in circles, and kind of like a, I don't know if you guys have ever seen the whirlpools when you like drain like a bunch of water like out of a sink or something like that, where it just kind of goes in circles and just goes down. A whirlpool of that size would drag you like probably 200 feet into that ocean, because there is a very small chance of like you making it out after you trying like just swim up while you're going down, and you have to swim up over like 200 feet. Like a lot of people die. The chances of surviving a whirlpool of that size incredibly low.
Julie McSorley. Julie McSorley and Liz Cottrell were kayaking in San Luis Obispo, California, drawn by a spectacular event, humpback whales feeding on fish in the bay.
Oh,
There were
no
lots
way.
of tourists on their boats and kayaks watching the whole thing. And even though whale watching is a popular activity, it comes with important safety precautions. Experts recommend staying at least 300 feet away from the feeding zone to avoid dangerous encounters. Unfortunately, Julie and Liz misjudged the distance. A tightly packed swarm of fish, known as a bait ball, suddenly moved alarmingly close to them. But they weren't the only ones to notice. Their presence had also caught the attention of a humpback whale. Before they had time to react, the whale lunged forward to swallow the fish, but in the process, it also scooped up Julie and Liz. Trapped inside its massive mouth,
Both of
they
them.
probably thought that they were about to be swallowed whole. After all, humpback whales can grow up to 56 feet long, a huge size from a human perspective. However, despite their enormous mouths, humpback whales have relatively small throats, only about the size of a human fist, and capable of stretching to just 15 inches in diameter.
That's
They
crazy. I thought they were bigger.
also lack teeth, meaning the two women weren't crushed. Luckily, a whale's natural instinct is to spit out anything that isn't fish, and that's exactly what happened. Moments later, Julie and Liz were spat out from the whale's mouth and surfaced unharmed.
If you ever get eaten by a whale, you'll probably be fine then. If their mouth is like the size of like a fist, then that means that there's very low chance that you might get swallowed by a whale. So I don't know what happened to the kayaks. Probably never got them back.
Matthew was heading to his factory for a
Matthew Rowe.
routine shift, just like any other day. Upon arriving, he immediately got to work. As he walked past an automated conveyor belt, he suddenly felt his overalls snag on something. Unfortunately, it was the conveyor itself. Before he could react, he was pulled onto the belt and dragged toward a 5-inch opening. Within seconds, his entire body was forced through the narrow tunnel. He could hear the cracks of his bones as the machine spat him out on the other side. Miraculously, he remained conscious. Matthew's agonizing screams alerted his coworkers, who rushed to the scene. What they saw was horrifying. His back was broken in 2 places, his pelvis, ribs, and hips were nearly completely crushed, and his abdomen was severely torn. He was rushed to the hospital.
How did this man not get his like head hurt? Because 5 inches is like probably the size of a phone. So this man did not get his head like hurt at all while being inside the machine. That's actually very fucking lucky.
Had little hope for his survival. They even advised
I
his
would
partner
too.
to prepare for the worst. However, against all odds, Matthew survived. After
Ow.
6 surgeries and a month in the
Okay.
hospital, he slowly began to recover.
That
18
bill-
months later, he
that
made a
bill
full
must have been
recovery
crazy.
and even returned to work. Taiba.
Did he get
A
paid?
young Indian girl, went out for a walk when she came across a construction site. Intrigued, she decided to explore the area. The site was filled with debris and half-finished structures, making it extremely risky to navigate, especially without proper equipment or experience. As she walked through the site, she tripped and fell neck first onto a long metal rod protruding from a brick. Bystanders witnessed the horrifying scene and immediately called for an ambulance. When Taiba arrived at the hospital, doctors were left stunned. Miraculously, the rod had missed all
That looks like it went straight through the eye. There's no way that she didn't get left blind, at least in one eye.
vital nerves and blood vessels in her head. After a 35-minute surgery, doctors successfully removed the rod. Amazingly, she was discharged just 3 days later. Had
No
she
way.
fallen just a few inches further forward, she would have died. Frane Selak. Frane Selak is an elderly
Okay, but like, what happened to her eyes? Because there's no way that she ended up like walking out of there with both eyes. Because it must have been like perfectly broken nose and through the skull in a way that it should have killed her. Or maybe it went like through here and through the other nose.
music teacher from Croatia, and he's both the luckiest and unluckiest man on earth. His first crazy experience happened in 1962 when he was on a train.
he has
A
multiple.
fault in the tracks caused the train to derail and plunge into the freezing river below. Most passengers either died in the crash or drowned in the submerged train, but Frane miraculously survived with only a broken arm and managed to swim to shore. In 1963, just a year after the train incident, he was on a small plane when, mid-flight, both engines failed. As the aircraft went into a free fall, a malfunctioning door blew open, yanking Frane out of the plane. Without a parachute, he must have thought he was going to die. The plane crashed into a hill, killing all 19 passengers on board. However, Frane survived by landing on a haystack, escaping with only minor injuries.
No
2
way.
years later, in 1965, he was traveling
This guy is so lucky. His whole plane crashed. Everyone died except him that got luckily pulled out. I guess this guy did not know what a fucking seatbelt was. So he ended up laying probably in the best spot that you could. Assassin's Creed type of landing.
traveling on a bus that was crossing a bridge. The icy conditions caused the bus's wheels to lock up, sending the vehicle crashing through the safety barrier and into the valley below. 4 passengers lost their lives, yet Frayne survived once again. After multiple accidents involving public transportation, he decided to rely on his own car.
Majority of these deaths seem like they should be in a Final Destiny movie that with this guy is moving. He survived a train where majority of people died, a plane crashed, and a bus ride crashed. And now probably gonna get crashed in the car too.
Only to find that it wasn't any safer. In 1970, while driving, his engine suddenly burst into flames. Miraculously, he managed to jump out in time and survived. But this wasn't his only brush with fire. 3 years later, in 1973, while driving another car, the fuel pump ruptured, causing yet another fire. This time, the flames were blown directly toward him through the air vents. Despite suffering burns, he once again managed to escape. As if that weren't enough, in 1975, he survived being hit by a
this guy's
bus.
immortal.
Then, just a year later, he had another near-death experience when his car fell off a mountain road, plummeting 300 feet after a careless driver forced him off the road. The car exploded upon impact, but Frayne managed to survive by jumping out of the vehicle's
How
window
is this guy
mid-fall
alive?
and landing on a tree. And by the way, he won the lottery in 2003.
There's no way. Yeah, after getting that lucky that many times, I would buy a lottery ticket too. And the thing is that he actually fucking won. This guy won the lottery ticket after almost dying like 6-7 times within like 6-7 years. This guy is definitely testing out his luck and probably ran out of it after winning the lottery. I don't know what happened to him, but it is 2025 right now, so this guy probably definitely already died. And now I'm curious how much he won. It is actually true. Frano Selak, 2 days after his 73rd birthday, Selak won 900,000 pounds, equivalent to $1.1 million in the lottery. At the time of his win, he also married a 5th time. Damn, so he married like 5 times, but he won the lottery, so a win's a win. Alright, enjoy your video. I like that deep paint explainer. Love your video, interesting story, and I'm actually surprised about the last one the most.